G'day there, everyone. Daniel Anderson here, and welcome to this episode of the Daniel Anderson Audio Experience. And joining me today, I am very privileged to have Adam Harmetz from Microsoft here. So, welcome, Adam.
Good to be with you.
Now, Adam, you are a product executive at Microsoft. Now, for the people watching and listening, tell me a little bit about yourself, your role, and I guess the day in the life of Adam.
Sure. So I've been at Microsoft for 16 years. Supposed to be one, but here I am 15 years later. Common story. And most of the time I've worked on SharePoint. I joined in 2005 via SharePoint in an office organization, but mostly on SharePoint stuff. And boy, SharePoint was in that hockey stick growth stage. I joined after it was already pretty clearly taken off. But, similar to where Teams is today, right? It was the organizational plane for collaboration in that era of computing. And boy, it's fun to work on a product that was going through that high growth stage. Just as that was getting a little boring, the cloud came along. And today I work for Omar Shaheen, who's the VP of PM over in the OneDrive and SharePoint organization. And I take care of the sort of front end experiences for SharePoint and things that SharePoint powers, like Viva Connections and Viva Topics. It's a team of 30 product managers supporting hundreds of engineers around the world. Day in the life is always a little different. Product management's an interesting sort of jack of all trades role, Jack or Jill of all trades. And just try to spend a lot of my time focused on either product or strategy or, listening to customers and synthesizing all that. As a partner at Microsoft, like all partners at Microsoft, spend time thinking about how to improve our culture and how to improve the company as a whole and how to partner across all of the company as opposed to just my team in my area. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, obviously being a product leader at Microsoft, there's a lot of people that I guess would want part of your time, and I'm obviously very appreciative of being able to carve out a little bit of time for me to have a chat to you today as well. But doing a little bit of research for this show, I was reading some stats that you published, and there's a number of articles and content that I've read of yours recently, which we're going to dive into in a little bit as well. But you were talking about the amount of, and you showed some stats around the meetings you attend and the instant message chats that you have and the emails that you sent. And I just want to read out a couple of these because they're kind of staggering to me anyway. And you mentioned that you attend over 2,000 meetings during a year. So this is a year in your life. 4,000 instant message chats and over 7,000 emails sent. Now, that's a big number in anyone's terminology. So that obviously needs a lot of personal organization. There's a lot of people that would get overwhelmed with that, and I think we're seeing also with the current state where hybrid work and all that sort of stuff that we know very well now, that people are getting overwhelmed with the different types and modalities of communication and things like that. And one of the things that came out in your content as well is around how you organize your work life. And you talk about 4 different categories that you categorize things into: strategy, product, customers, and team. And you also then, which was very interesting to me, and I'm hoping you can explain a little bit more, is one of the most powerful tools that you have implemented or started to use, and that's the calendar audit. You call it a calendar audit. Now, what's a calendar audit? How do you do it? And what are the benefits that you've found by doing that?
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, adding a little maybe legitimacy to what I'm doing. But now that you repeat it back to me, sounds like a lot of time in
it is a lot.
All that. And yeah, it is. I not scientific numbers. I just took a couple weeks running average and multiplied it out to figure out how much in the year. And those meetings include all the one-on-ones and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and that is part of Microsoft. I think working across teams is important for almost all big tech companies. It's doubly important at Microsoft as we've come to the cloud. And then, in particular, we've chosen to do it a little bit through a brute force product management centric way with a lot of syncing. So, good and bad on some days, but it's allowed me to really think proactively, like, hey, that's my job. What do I got to do to succeed and thrive in that? And it's gotten more intense over the years as well. But back to your question on the calendar audit. Yeah, it's just something I made up when I was, like I said, trying to pull on that thread and be curious about how I manage my time. It's a very simple mechanic. Just step one, define the buckets of work. It's actually how, you mentioned strategy, customers, team, and product. And I actually got to those 4 buckets by trying to track my time for a couple weeks. I had 16, 17 buckets, and I'm like, oh, well, that, not surprisingly, like everything's 5%. So let me try to create some higher level categories. And that, out of that came those 4 buckets, which, nothing revolutionary, but it sort of was ground bottom up using data. Like, okay, so this is how I'm running my time. And if I bucket, my time spending looking at data cubes together with the time I'm talking with customers into one customer bucket, that feels right to me. And then, it went from there, because that's how I write. We have these things called connects at Microsoft. It's our performance review and how we're doing. And so I write my connect based upon those 4 things. When I do top of mind with my team, I talk about those 4 buckets. So, it's sort of an organizing principle for my life, for my work life anyways. And then, so that was step 1 of the calendar audit. And then step 2 is, I don't do it all the time. I think that'd be too much overhead, but every so often for 2 weeks straight, at the end of the day, I'll have an Excel spreadsheet. I just say, okay, among those 4 buckets, what is everything, where did I spend my time, both in meetings and then outside? And then average it up after 2 weeks. And, I have a hypothesis of where I think I am. I have some goals of where I think I ought to be. And then I have what it actually is. And so over the years, it's helped me discover, too much time on strategy, got to spend more time with customers. I have a friend who has this is a sad rule, but a good one, spending more time with customers than they do with execs internally at the company is, her personal OKR. And I think I meet that easily too. That's an important thing to stay grounded. But anyways, most recently, yet again, I let strategy creep up too much into my work and not actually enough getting my hands dirty on product individually. So before it was like, okay, more time with customers. This time I'm actually creating some new mechanics to dig in with the team on product. I felt like that was the business need, and also where I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm just not doing that enough, feeling a little disconnected from product itself. So I don't know, just keeps me centered.
Yeah. And obviously, as part of your role, and probably a lot of people also that are watching and listening, the amount of information that is being thrown at you, or you need to stay on top of or consume, and that type of thing is increasing every year. And you mentioned also things around feedback loops and technology enabling more information creation, and it also then puts that demand back on technology and us, I guess, to keep up. And there's something that you also talk about a high calorie information diet, as you call it now. Consuming news and analysis and information and things like that is part of a habit that you have, and probably most people have, that does turn into a hobby as well. I mean, I do it as well.
Yeah, a lot of us do.
Making sure that we're keeping abreast of everything that's happening and enjoying learning and that type of thing as well, and develops intuition, as you say. What is it where do you consume your content, and how do you stay on top of all of that as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. On staying on top of on all the comm streams. Yeah, I I used to use the stat that the data in the world is doubling every 18 months. I remember a couple of years ago that was a stat Microsoft had, and then Forbes was just interviewing Michael Dell, and his quote was data is doubling every 7 months. So it's like, well, one of the two. Either way, it's an impressive stat.
It's big.
And the hypothetical thing is like, is your ability to consume data improving at the same rate that the amount of data in the world is improving? And that sounds a little crazy, but like when I thought about it in my career, like I actually talk about this in the PMs, product managers who are 3 to 5 years in career. Like, it's amazing what you can get done in a day that used to take you a week. uh, when you're in that stage of your growth of product management. You do learn how to consume information and get faster at it. And I think that's a period of your career where it's like on hyperspeed, and the rest of, your career, maybe it sort of ebbs and flows a little. But yeah, if we all think about, like, I mean, 10 years ago, we weren't all using mobile phones necessarily to consume data like we do. I think it's throwing about a bunch of metaphors, but like a boiling frog problem, right? Where you don't even realize, like, slowly over time, you are getting much more info dense in what you're doing. But yeah, I try to think about it and be proactive. I mean, I have two sort of organizing principles. One is, I didn't make this up. This one's called Ohio. Only handle it once. So for just email, comms, and triage, like, boy, I want my inbox to be a source of communication, not a to-do list. So, like, having that email in there that I actually read 4 times because I need to action on it, but I didn't action it yet. Like, you either delete it because you like process it, or you quickly respond, or then you move it out into some task management app. Like, it's a form of zero inbox. But to me, that principle of, like, you know what, I don't want my inbox to be this source of, well, it'll be a source of stress and whatever people are saying, but not a source of stress of what to do. Do
you ever get to zero inbox?
I do. Generally, I'm at like 5 inbox because I say I follow Ohio, but then there'll be just like some muscle memory that doesn't quite get there. But yeah, and I have a lot of privilege being a M2 manager at Microsoft. Like, I have frontline managers that handle a lot of the incredibly mission critical. So I have a lot more choice over where I spend my time, I find, which is I try to use that luxury, right? And can afford to get to zero inbox. I can afford to be like, let me not reply to this and see what other very, very smart and talented people will say. And more often than not, they're replying even better than I would have. And, that was my other principle too, is like, sounds obvious, but if you send less mail, you will get less mail, which is true, but like hard to live by. Like, I actually, as I moved up in my career, sort of realized, like, okay, what if I am not the first to jump on that response? First off, it's less work for me. And second, I'm surprised by how much that empowers and how much others responded just as well or better than I would have. And I'm like, well, I'll go. That's great. They're handling that part. I get to go do other stuff. So.
And you mentioned, sending less emails. So inside of Microsoft, obviously we're under the impression and the perception that Teams is the go-to communication tool. Is that the case? So is that your main communication platform?
I mean, it's essential to what we do. 7,000 mails, 4,000 chats. So, you do the percentage, I suppose. And it's highly variable across the company. But in OneDrive and SharePoint organization, many of us were former Slack users before Teams even existed. And yeah, we really embraced that. And it comes with, it definitely comes in with a second inbox to triage. It definitely comes with an inbox without 30 years of muscle memory on it. And I probably use group chat a little more than channels, given the way that sort of creates a natural triage mechanic. But yeah, we use it all. And it really is the way work is done. Like, our org would come to a screeching halt if we couldn't use channels and chat, for sure.
Yeah. And, being part of a large, you mentioned before about around about a 30 plus size team that you're part of. Moving, how remote were you prior to pandemic and things like that? Were you compared to what you are now?
Oh, it's definitely night and day. I'm sure many of your listeners know Vesa of the SharePoint community. So he was on the team, and he was our remote employee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was actually super fun, and actually not fun, but also like instrumental in helping us with patience explain how to work remote when we all had to go remote all of a sudden. We had Vesa learn hours. He was teaching us all about that, as we all were forced to be remote, and something he's been doing for a decade. And now, of course, even as we were planning on returning to the office, a couple things have happened. One, we've expanded our cross-geo footprint from Suzhou, China, Hyderabad, India, Atlanta, Georgia, work with folks in Norway, Vancouver, BC. And so we're just, in a more globally distributed world and team. And then, when we come back to the office, Microsoft policy right now is that anybody without any permission can work remote up to 50% of the time. I'll be in only, 2-3 days a week. And then, locally within our team, it's pretty much automatic approval if you'd like to work remote full time at this point. So everybody's talking about how to deal with that, how to thrive in that environment. A lot of people are writing white papers on what to do. My approach is to take a little more of a growth mindset. We're going to just have to learn by doing and not set norms yet. And let's do it. Let's figure out what we love and what we don't like about however it's working for the first 2 to 3 months, and then codify it and then figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more complex than shipping most features globally is how you reassemble a hybrid workplace, for sure.
And I guess that's also meant that you've had to change your working style and habits, and especially a communication standpoint as well. Have you found what's the biggest impact or change that you've seen or made yourself around the communication, and just making sure that everybody is still connected and feels included and be able to have their say, but also for you being able to communicate out to those people as well?
Yeah, one of the biggest changes since the pandemic began is I really changed up my Monday mornings. Part of this is for your question on the team, and half of it at least is just for myself. Like, first off, Monday mornings are easy to do sort of fewer meetings because nobody wants to have an important meeting first thing of the week. So naturally it was lighter anyways. And so being able to carve that out time to just sort of find your center, find your zen, and find your big things you're doing this week, make room for the epic things you want to get done versus the urgent, focus on the important. That's what I do with my Monday mornings. And, to get the context and get back in the mode, I, sounds simple, but I sort of write a left to right status mail of what's going on in the team. And also, what's going on Twitter, and what's going on with what big cadence meetings did we have last week? What should people know this week? And I started it, partly when COVID first started, just to keep, prevent FOMO, keep everybody that was remote saying, okay, so we are, here's what's going on. You can disconnect and go handle stuff with your family and come back and read this and you'll be up to speed. But it's also a way for me to sort of, I choose what I get done this week after I write that mail, because it's like, okay, so if this is what I'm telling the team is most important, now what am I going to do myself? And so it's been super useful. And then, we followed up with some in-person connection time. So, we basically walk through that mail from 11:30 to 12. We start off that stand-up meeting with a personal, what vacations are you taking soon? And then we have somebody on the team who loves puns. So we always end the meeting with a joke or something like that, just trying to, basically a status sandwich, a bunch of good status to prevent FOMO, surrounded by two things to just remind us we're all humans.
Yeah.
That's really worked for me. I don't say it's some panacea, and I'm sure there's still folks on the team that don't feel as connected as they need to. And, lots of stuff of people thinking about the adventures they want, but that's been super effective. And then, beyond that, we totally redid our rhythm of the business as a result of this now fully remote and soon to be hybrid, 45-minute meetings. We moved away from PowerPoint to Word as a way more common mechanic. Seems to be a good change anyways, but it's good when you're remote, to make sure you're not missing nuances and just to be detail oriented.
Have you found, what about and everybody talks about, how much time we're spending in meetings and, reducing the amount of time we do spend in meetings, and I guess working in a more async way with teams and being able to discuss things, I guess in a little bit of a different way than we used to. Are you finding that your meetings are also now a little bit shorter, and they're more for actual decision making, and you're able to have a lot of the discussions that you'd normally have in a meeting, but you're now able to have them, in chat or in a group chat even before you get to those meetings?
Yeah, I was responsible in the organization for coming up with what we called Meetings 2.0, set up best practices about the meetings we run. And, there's a bunch of them. Talked with the head of product at LinkedIn, and, they're pretty famous for having this. Every meeting starts with "this meeting will be a success if" slide or doc or whatever. And you just sort of, goals and outcome of the meeting, basic block and tackle, but, instituting stuff like that just to make, and if the goal, you write down the goal and it's like inform, then, well, yeah, that could have been an email. And oftentimes it's a checksum on it. So that, so that's been good. But the honest truth is the business context matters. During this pandemic, I got deeply involved in what ended up becoming Microsoft Viva, which is bringing more teams together than I've ever had in my 15-year career and birthing an entirely new product line, the first new product from Microsoft 365 since Teams. Incredible amount to coordinate across marketing, user research, design, product management, let alone engineering. And so I can't honestly say I had less meetings. I could probably say I had more because business context required new bonds, new things. What you said, the way you framed it, resonated completely for people I've been working with for 15 years. Yeah, we moved to chat. We know each other super well. Like we were able to, avoid a ton of meetings and get stuff done more efficiently and with new ways of working. And then when it came time for, bond storming, norming, forming new things, requires FaceTime. Software is really more about people than bits, and bits are important too. But that just required a lot of FaceTime.
Good segue into Viva. Let's touch on that for a minute as well. Obviously, a lot of good things happening in that space. What's your involvement in the Viva ecosystem?
Yeah, so my team owns 2 of the 4 Viva modules in terms of product ownership, just to be, crystal clear on it. Viva Connections and Viva Topics, which are both, very much powered by the, SharePoint as an underlying platform. And then, as you can imagine, there's a set of founders, there's a set of leadership of Viva all up that's trying to figure out what it means to come together as more than just the sum of 4 modules. And I'm a member of that. There is a central core Viva team that is working on that every day of their lives, and I work closely with them. But that's a separate team, and we're all working together to try to product make. It's been an interesting journey. We brought together people with experience in HR, and we brought together people with great product experience, but not in this particular industry. And then maybe someone like me, who I think the primary value add, hopefully among others, but is industry and historical context. And so we're all coming together and figuring out what that means, and hope to do some of the best product making of our careers.
Yeah, and Viva Connections, I guess. Where there's a lot of, and it was interesting. I've had this talk a couple of times with a number of different people now, but where a lot of organizations' entry point or starting point recently into Office 365 or Microsoft 365 has been Microsoft Teams. Because they've had to work remotely and meet and that type of thing. Whereas traditionally it's been always get your email in there and that's the starting point, and then you expand out from there. But I'd be interested in you being a SharePoint person as well, interested in your take on, I guess, where SharePoint is right now, because what I'm seeing, what I'm finding is that Teams, a lot of people are using Teams, right? But now they're saying, and now they're realizing there's this thing called SharePoint that we could probably make use of as well, not knowing the architecture of Teams and things like that.
Yeah.
And now Connections is going to bring SharePoint to the fore even more, I think, for those type of organizations. Is that sort of something that you're seeing? I mean, SharePoint's king and queen, as I keep always saying. It drives everything, right?
Once and future king.
That's right. So, is that sort of something that you're seeing also?
Yeah, depending on the audience you're talking to, I would describe Viva Connections differently, because I know it would be helpful to different business problems depending on where your history and origin is coming from. If you are a SharePoint diehard like me and have been with us on this journey for a long, long time, SharePoint, Viva Connections is the future of SharePoint portals. Absolutely. And in fact, we designed it from the ground up, so there's not some sort of terrible choice you make between SharePoint or Viva Connections. Like, your SharePoint home site is your desktop experience for Viva Connections. And it is fair to think about Viva Connections as nothing more than a new brand on a set of features we were adding to SharePoint portals anyways, namely very deep Teams integration, a lot more focus on mobile, and a little more focus on line of business app integration, and a much more quicker time to market for you to develop your app and your integration way. And so, and come along on that journey, and embrace the new brand because it's fresh and your end users won't have baggage. If you've only experienced Microsoft Teams, think of Viva Connections as an awesome front door to Teams. Like, your apps may be buried under this ... in the left-hand menu. Now you get a full page experience where your apps can, on mobile especially, can really take center stage and have insights that draw you into that app by having different, live cards, right? Similar to iOS and Android, who have both added dynamicism to their home screens. And that's a great way of thinking about Connections too. And then, if you are in HR and you're thinking about how to transform the employee experiences and create, meaningful ways of engaging with employees, think about Connections as the tool for that. Because it absolutely is. And, I'm very serious about understanding deeply what the HR buyer and the HR implementer need from something like Connections in order to build experiences that are going to transform their workplace. That is also an equally, we all remember SharePoint was a bit of a Swiss Army knife. And that's intentional. When you build global, well-used software, it is hard. I love it every day, trying to figure out the balance between all that. But that is the team's job, is to figure out how we can be absolutely successful across all those dimensions and more. We didn't even talk about first-line workers and how much it's a tool for that. And if you want to get super geeky, it's a horizontal composite experiences platform that can do all of these. Won't describe it like that to the HR folks. I will tell them the business problem it's going to be solving for them. But especially for folks that probably listen to your podcast who are looking to implement it within organizations, learn how to talk about it in business language to the
I think that's there's a big shift in that type of language in terms of looking at the business problem or the pain points and the end result of things, rather than starting at the technology. Or SharePoint's probably been, I'll say, does have a little bit of a bad rap in some circles.
But you don't need to sugarcoat it.
The way now things are being looked at, and those business outcomes that you're talking about, really does make a difference to how it's both implemented but also perceived as well.
Legacy. The word legacy is in tech is the only industry where legacy is a dirty word a little bit, right? SharePoint is loved by very many people. It has caused a bunch of economic positives for so many people and solved a bunch of problems for end users and employees over the years. And sometimes when people don't even realize it, but also it's an old technology, and there's people that suddenly have seen the worst of our product work, unfortunately, or maybe got a bad implementation of it. And or using, comparing modern tools, including like modern SharePoint, which we've redone over the past 5 years, to SharePoint 2007, which, take the iPhone from 2007 and compare it to today's tools, right? So, it's a real, our job I feel like is to modernize the platform, but then even more importantly, bring customers along for that journey, such that it's not just, and that is just as much of a working with humans and working with the industry, our partners, as well as customers who have bet on SharePoint, and making sure that they are felt brought along. I often, yes, there are many cloud-born competitors, and that's awesome. And maybe they have some agility advantages, but Microsoft, we were an on-prem company, and we transformed to the cloud. Almost all customers on the planet are in the same boat, right? They existed on-prem, and they've had to make that transition. And so I'd like to think Microsoft has a lot more empathy for what it means to go through that transition. And we try to take that and put it in product and put it with how we work with others. And it's pretty important to the ethos of the team here anyways.
Yeah. Now, I know you're a busy man, but before we wrap things up, another module that you mentioned before there was Viva Topics. Now, really interesting module for me as well. And we spoke before about the information overload and that type of thing. And there's a lot of there's a lot of information that is kept inside organizations, potentially in silos, and knowledge transfer and things like that is really important to the development of an organization. Viva Topics goes to help bring that information out front and center. Tell me a little bit about the type of organization that you think would benefit from Viva Topics, and how, I guess briefly at a high level, how that integrates in with the different services across 365.
Yeah, I mean, any organization that cares about knowledge and retaining that within the organization and sharing it serendipitously across their organizational borders would benefit from Viva Topics, which it's hard to think of an organization that wouldn't prioritize that, for sure. It is true, probably the organizations that have more of a history of treating knowledge as intellectual property to harvest are those that are very receptive to a knowledge management system. Certainly those in more regulated industries or more process driven, or those that spend an incredible amount on high capital projects. And you can't imagine, like, it's the ROI is so easy to calculate, right? You're building this big capital project and you need to build a second one. All the information you could learn from the first one to apply to the second one. And that's just, we see that embedded in culture in a way that's different than some other organizations, but really any of them would completely benefit. And I see Viva Topics as transforming the way knowledge is harvested at almost any organization, all the way from 2 member shops all the way up to 100,000 person organizations in the decade of the 2020s. We are just getting started. And it is not going to be only through AI. It's going to be through AI and great tools for manual creation. And it's going to be about putting it in the path of usage. You are going to get hooked on Viva Topics being everywhere in your chats and your email when you need it. Such that if you all of a sudden moved organizations and didn't have it, you'd be like, whoa, how can I function like this? It's like the reply button being gone or something like that, right? Because it is going to subtly be there when you need it. And the early adopters who are investing in it right now are going to be on that train with us. And I think it's going to be a differentiator for companies who really think strategically about it. It's not just a technology choice. It is a technology plus a culture choice that you are making to invest in this. And, the best ones have dedicated knowledge managers, or at least those in the business are elected to do that, to think through it. Like technology won't solve all your problems, right? You got to have people who think about this and are accountable, and enlist folks to be able to spend time to do that and think about in your culture how that's important.
Yeah, what I love about it is that there's a lot of talk about improved productivity through less context switching and having things appear in people's flow of work and that type of thing. And I think Viva Topics is really good at presenting that and doing that. So regardless of where I am, whether I'm in SharePoint or reading something in SharePoint or in Teams or in chat or whatever the case may be, you've got access to that information, and you don't have to switch context. It's just there in front of you.
Yeah, and no doubt we have a lot to build as we get there, and some of this has been tried before, a couple years ago, decades ago. What's changed? And 2 things: one, the AI is more mature, and then 2, to your point, I don't know, that sounds great, and it is true. We are going to put it in the path of usage, but I've really been humbled by just how hard of a problem that is. Exactly how that's exposed, what it looks like. What is getting in the user's face versus what is not, what is just the right amount, what is manually done, which is suggested versus automatically tagged. These are details we're going to sweat over, and details we are experimenting with our early customers with and are going to tailor. I don't know the right answer, and I don't think you could hire a vendor that knows the right answer, but what we're going to do is sort of get this at global scale, listen to the metrics, listen to our close customers, and tailor and tune until we get it exactly right. And I think that is, couldn't have done that on-prem. Their signals weren't coming back to be able to do that. It's really this age of computing, and it's sort of from a vendor that, is able to integrate into all these touch points that employees experience every day, that I think can succeed on it the best, and really just get it to be, part of employees' work, the way they work without even realizing it. So
Mm.
that is the
Yeah.
vision. That's where we're marching towards, and I am excited by it. I think, I was just talking with Naomi Moneypenny, who's the head of topics today, and we were both lamenting we had ideas about where to take this industry, but sometimes it was at the wrong time. Like, oh, I thought of that 3 years ago, and now we're doing it now, type of thing.
Yeah, right.
And we were like, yeah, that's true. Like, something you got to work. When's the right time for a product and an idea? And I do think the thing that's awesome about Viva Topics is I think it's just hitting at the right time. I think that tech is mature. The ability to send signals is new and can be captured. And yeah, I think, like you were saying, there's just so much demand for information is exploding, and for just be able to capture that. So yeah. I think it's well timed and across all those dimensions.
Very good. Now, as we wrap things up, mate, I really do appreciate the time. I know you're a busy man, and I'm really, from my point of view, I'm really enjoying the content that you're putting out there. There's a little 3-part series that actually instigated this chat all around, how you manage your time and things like that with different tools. And it was a really, really good series. So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. If people want to engage with you or keep up to date with what's happening with Viva or topics or just what you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm definitely on Twitter at Adam Harmetz, ADAMHARMETZ. And then the series you're starting is actually a Substack. You referenced is a Substack I started with my wife. She's also a product tech, although in startup land.
Right.
And we talk a little bit about product, but we try not to make it about that. We talk about career, time management, parenting. And so that's just blog.mind the beat is what we call it. Like the vegetable, mind, MINDTHEBEET.com. And, if you go there, it'll ask you to, subscribe to our Substack, and we try to publish every Sunday morning. And, I'm trying to I have a sort of a passion for writing that I sort of thought everybody had, and then it turns out they don't. So I'm trying to explore it and see where it goes. And my wife is as well. It's been a good joint project together.
No, it's very good. So I encourage everybody to jump on over there, subscribe. There's some good content in there. So, Adam, thank you very much. And we'll have to have you back on and talk a little bit more about Viva connections and topics as well.
I'd love to. That'd be good. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you, mate.